Today's tale revolves around a wife who decided to leave her husband for her lover, but the unexpected happens. My 18-year-old daughter and I stood together, watching as my 25-year-old wife and boss, Chastity, loaded the last of her suitcases into the trunk of his car. He had come to pick her up that Sunday morning because they had a meeting in New York on Monday. Their flight was scheduled for that evening, so they could arrive on time and be well prepared for the first of many meetings with the opposing party before mediation began. After 25 years of marriage, Chastity remained a very attractive woman. Standing at 5 feet 5 inches, she had gained a few pounds over the years, but still maintained a slim figure. Her black hair framed her emerald green eyes, and her curves remained in all the right places. Just 2 months ago, she had celebrated her 44th birthday. Chastity was a woman who embraced comfort and contentment in her life. We had gotten married right after high school. While I worked hard to pay for her university education, I simultaneously pursued my studies online. The years had been kind to her, and even after childbirth, her appearance hadn't changed much. When she graduated from law school, we moved back to our hometown to be closer to our families. By then, we already had 2 children. In her first year of practicing law, our youngest, Julie, was born. Now, as I watched her, I couldn't help but feel conflicted. Standing there, I was filled with irritation, especially when I noticed the smug smirk on Michael's face. Her boss, the man helping her load her suitcases. His self-satisfied expression told me he thought he had outsmarted me, and it enraged me. From the look in his eyes, it was clear he saw himself as the winner of some unspoken competition. My fists clenched involuntarily, and I was just 2 steps away from lunging at him. I desperately wanted to say something, to confront him, but I bit my tongue. He wasn't worth it, and honestly, neither was she, not anymore. Chastity had explained the trip to us multiple times, emphasizing it was purely professional. According to her, this was their last chance to settle a major civil case before taking it to court. She had been so focused on her plans that she hadn't picked up on the subtle clues in my words, the ones that suggested I knew there was more to this trip than she was letting on. The truth? I did know. A little bird had told me. A woman named Louise, whom I'd never met, had contacted me. She had found my number and called me at work. Claiming to be Michael's wife, she warned me about what was truly going on. She explained that St. Louis was just the first stop, and New York would follow that evening. While their official meeting with the opposing legal team was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning, Louise made it clear that their plans weren't purely professional. We had offered to drive Chastity to the airport to see her off, but she declined. She insisted that Michael's car was already parked at the airport and that this arrangement was more convenient. It was infuriating, especially because they refused to tell us when they would return. Physically, Michael and I weren't all that different. He was only about 2 inches taller than me and 6 years younger. He wasn't in better shape either. But I couldn't deny that he was a good-looking man, the kind of guy who radiated confidence. That only made him more infuriating. If it came to a fight, it would have been an even match, but I wasn't willing to stoop to his level. Sensing my rising anger, my daughter Julie stepped in front of me. She knew what I was thinking and acted quickly, blocking my path. Every time I moved, so did she, positioning herself to prevent me from confronting him. She was smart, too smart to let me make a fool of myself. Her actions weren't just protecting me from him. They were protecting me from becoming someone I didn't want to be. We stood on the porch and waved goodbye as they drove off. There was no doubt in my mind that Chastity was looking forward to wild nights with her new lover, Michael, in the big city. Their bright future, however, wouldn't be as perfect as she envisioned. Chastity had joined the firm 6 years ago, and 2 years ago, she had been promoted to associate partner. That promotion marked a turning point in our lives, and not for the better. The power and prestige of her new position seemed to have gone to her head. Unknown to Chastity, Louise had provided me with detailed accounts of Michael's behavior. She described his history of having affairs with women who worked under him, claiming this would be the last time he'd do it to her. Louise had set a trap, and she wanted me to be aware of everything. Once their car disappeared down the street, Julie and I went back inside. "Do you think Mom has any idea what we know about her plans, Dad?" Julie asked. "That Michael is just adding another notch to his belt with her? Probably not," I replied. "Your mother has always struggled to see beyond the smoke and mirrors. Even with her sharp legal mind, she ignores the warning signs. If she's heard rumors about Michael's past, she's dismissed them as idle gossip. She never takes those kinds of things seriously." Julie nodded, listening intently as I continued. "Rumors may not always be entirely true, but they almost always start with a kernel of truth. Unfortunately, your mother has always chosen to see the world through rose-colored glasses. And now, she's willingly walking into this relationship because she thinks she won't get caught. For her, it's out of sight, out of mind. This is just an exciting escape from the monotony of our daily lives. For Chastity, when she realizes she has simply become another one of the many women Michael has used, it will be devastating. The reality of what she has done will hit even harder." My daughter looked at me seriously before asking, "Why do you say that? If you think that, why didn't you try to stop it?" "You know your mother as well as I do," I replied. "If I told her not to have an affair, she would deny it outright. She'd accuse me of being jealous, immature, and childishly naive. The discussion would spiral downhill into a big argument that wouldn't lead anywhere. She would have left for the trip angry at me and would have gone ahead with her plans regardless. She had already made up her mind. Nothing we said or did would have changed it." "Does his wife know what's going to happen?" Julie asked. "Yes, and so does her father," I said. "They already have the paperwork prepared to file once they catch them. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. Louise has the names of other women he's taken as his mistresses. Her children are old enough now for her to manage their needs without him, so she decided to tear down the facade of their marriage. Michael will be served divorce papers for adultery, and your mom will be served for interference with marriage. Will you forgive Mom?" Julie asked, her face filled with worry. "Not this time," I said firmly. "I already forgave her once, and that was hard enough. But this is different. She won't be forgiven again. It's time to settle the score and move on." The moment she left, divorce was already on the agenda. She had her chance, and she blew it. I would remember the look on my daughter's face for the rest of my life. Neither she nor the other kids ever knew about the first time her mother cheated. It must have been a shock for her to find out now. "Dad, you'd better explain that comment," Julie said, frowning, "because it just doesn't make sense." "Julie," I said, lowering my voice, "you're the youngest, so what I'm about to tell you stays between us. The last time this happened was before your mother found out she was pregnant with you. It continued until she started showing. If you had been his child, I would have left her then and there. Luckily, the blood test confirmed that you were mine." The look of shock on my 18-year-old daughter's face was priceless. This was a family secret known only to 3 people. For the sake of the family, we had deliberately kept it hidden. "Who was he?" Julie asked cautiously. "Do we know him?" "This is a man I haven't spoken to in 18 years, I said. "Your kids all call him Uncle Charles." Julie sat there, processing everything. Suddenly, things began to make sense to her. If Charles was present at a family event, I was never there. Chastity always drove the kids to see him, but over the years, she had deliberately avoided him. Julie remembered that her grandparents always celebrated Christmas twice. Christmas Eve with us and Christmas Day with Charles. Now, she understood why I had never communicated or associated with her uncle. "Hey, Julie," I said sarcastically. "Maybe you should text your uncle and let him know that Chastity will be back on the market soon. Let him know what hotel they're staying at this week. With his past experiences with your mom, he might see this as a chance to reconnect, for old time's sake." With that, I walked to the kitchen and began making coffee. I opened up the Southeastern Missouri newspaper and started scanning the classified pages for a place to rent. While I searched for something to buy, I knew that until Julie graduated from university, Chastity would be allowed to stay in the house. I needed to move out before she returned. I also planned for the legal side of things. Judge Donald McDonald always prioritized the needs of children in his decisions. His reputation for fairness was well known, and failing to appear in his court was practically signing your own death warrant. Knowing this, I made my plans carefully. As I flipped through the newspaper, I heard Julie's phone ring. She answered quietly, speaking so softly that I couldn't make out her words. They must have talked for quite some time because, by the time she returned to the kitchen, I had already made several calls and lined up some rental units to inspect. "Dad," Julie said, walking into the kitchen. "Uncle Charles admitted everything. He asked how I found out about it." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "I told him what's going on in our lives right now." He went silent for a few minutes and then said, "Your dad doesn't deserve this." He also said that if you're willing to listen to his side, he'll be waiting for you. From my angle, I had always seen their behavior back then as a complete betrayal. But I stayed in the marriage for the sake of the children. I was old school. I didn't want my kids growing up in a divided home. I opened the liquor cabinet, pulled out a 40-ounce bottle of Jack and said, "Julie, I need you to take me somewhere and then bring the car back home. If either of us is sober by then, I'll come home. If not, when I wake up, I'll be there." He was waiting for me at our old favorite spot, a little fishing spot at the back of our father's property. At first, we just passed the bottle back and forth in silence. Then, finally, Charles began telling me his side of the story. It was the complete opposite of what Chastity had told me years ago, which made me realize the truth was likely somewhere in the middle. After all these years, the truth didn't matter much anymore. Still, it was nice to hear Charles take responsibility for his behavior. Given what my wife was about to do, I found myself placing more blame on her now. Additionally, I remembered that Charles had always been more of a follower than a leader, even back then. As the night wore on and the bottle emptied, our father found us. Seeing the fire we had lit, he had come out with a gun, assuming he'd need to drive away some local teenagers. When he realized it was just us, he pulled us into the back of Charles's truck and drove us back to the farmhouse. Our mother, just like in the old days, immediately went to the kitchen and pulled out her cast iron skillet to make eggs and fried potatoes to sober us up. It had been years since I heard my father say, "If you boys want to get drunk and act like idiots, do it here in the back 50. Then, with a small smile, he added, "Thank God you did it right." While we ate, my mother called both Julie and Charles's wife, Mary. By the time they arrived, Charles and I had started sobering up. We weren't slurring our words anymore, at least. Mary looked at us in bewilderment. Since marrying Charles after the fallout, she had never seen us together. "Okay, you two made up," Mary said, crossing her arms. "But after all these years, I think we all have a right to know what caused the separation in the first place." I was about to speak, but Charles nudged me, just like he used to do when we were kids. It was his signal for me to shut up while he tried to talk us out of trouble. Charles had always been better at coming up with stories that people believed, so I braced myself for another one. But this time I was wrong. "Chastity and I," Charles began hesitantly, "we had an affair while she was pregnant with Julie. It was my fault. I was immature and stupid. My younger brother, who was always more mature, caught us. He told me then that I was dead to him in his eyes. And that's how it's been ever since. Hearing this, our father finally understood why Charles and I had become estranged. "Damn," he muttered. "If I were Clint, I'd have killed you. What caused you to finally break the silence after all this time?" Mom asked. "Chastity flew to New York with her boss," I replied. "According to the hotel they're staying at, they only booked one room for the entire trip. Louise, Michael's wife, and her father have hired private investigators to follow them. I'll be providing them with copies of the claims, videos of them being served, and any other evidence they gather." As I explained all this, I realized that Julie now understood the full scope of her mother's actions. It was hard for her to process, especially because it was clear now that her mother had been planning this for a long time. Chastity's betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. Julie looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I should have let you go after that idiot, Dad." No one said anything for a moment, so I added, "Since Chastity will be allowed to keep the house while Julie lives there and goes to university, I need to find a place to live before she comes back." "Dad, I'm not going to live with Mom," Julie said firmly. "Where you go, I will go. We'll do it together." Julie was like me. When she said something, she meant it no matter the cost. "Julie, come with me for a minute," Mom said, and they went upstairs. My parents' house was a massive 2-story farmhouse, so they had plenty of space to talk in private. By the time they returned, they had decided that Julie and I would move in with them for the time being. All we needed to take with us was our clothes. On the way home, Julie told me off. "You need to stop defending Mom, Dad. Stop defending her to any of us. We're all adults now." She went to New York knowing full well what she was going to do with Michael, believing she wouldn't get caught. To me, that shows what she really thinks about us. After we got home that Monday night, we began slowly moving out the items we wanted to keep. Each of us took only our most treasured possessions. I took my rocking chair, and Julie grabbed her makeup table and mirror. Throughout the week, Chastity called to keep us updated on her trip, reporting on the slow progress of the case. But I knew better than to believe everything she said. Meanwhile, Louise called me, suggesting we finally meet in person. We agreed to meet Thursday night at Logan's Roadhouse. Around 8 p.m., I arrived at the restaurant in my work clothes, without a tie. Louise was already there, dressed in a modest yet elegant dress and skirt. I recognized her immediately by the white scarf she had mentioned she would wear. I introduced myself, and she greeted me warmly. Louise was pleasant to look at, obviously several years younger than me and exuding health and vitality. She had long blonde hair, soft blue eyes, and a slender figure that naturally commanded attention. Her curves were alluring, yet she dressed conservatively, which only added to her appeal. Michael had truly proven himself to be an idiot, in my opinion. Having someone like Louise at home and choosing to pursue my wife, who was at least 5 years older than her, didn't make any sense to me. Why would anyone go for comfort food when they had prime meat right in front of them? I learned that Louise was indeed 10 years younger than me and had 2 young daughters, aged 8 and 10. I explained that I had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl, ranging in age from 23 to 18, with only my youngest still living at home. Louise told me she was a kindergarten teacher, which explained her conservative style. I couldn't help but think that my elementary school teachers had never been this attractive. As we talked, Louise shared more about Michael's schedule. She explained that they would still be in New York through the weekend. Though about 70% of the work on settling the case was done, they still needed to translate everything into legal terms and sign the agreements before they could leave. Louise assured me that Michael and Chastity would be served late Sunday evening or early Monday morning while they were still asleep. The hotel's security service, with approval from management, would allow the private investigators into their room. Cameras would capture the moment, documenting everything. She asked how I was handling the situation. I replied, "Much better than last time. We've all talked about it, and I've realized that the main difference between then and now is that this time it's intentional. Last time, things seemed so black and white." "Do you know who the first person was?" Louise asked. "Yes," I said. "It was my older brother over 18 years ago. It happened before my youngest child was born. Until this week, we hadn't spoken in 18 years. But we made peace last Sunday after I told my daughter Julie about it. She actually made us work the way we did when we were kids. I had the worst hangover I've had in years." Louise laughed, and I added, "It was even worse because our father caught us, just like he did when we were teenagers. He dragged us home like we were still wet behind the ears." Louise found it amusing but noted how nice it must be to be around my parents. I told her that my youngest daughter and I would be moving in with them until I could find a new home. I had already taken my tools, some sporting equipment, weapons, and clothes. The rest I left behind. I planned to keep Chastity's cell phone active until Sunday evening, after which I'd block her number permanently. Before we parted ways that night, Louise and I went to a nearby bar and danced a few times. It was an enjoyable evening, and I went home in good spirits, all things considered. When I arrived, my daughter Julie immediately started questioning me. She knew, or at least should have known, everything by that point. The next day, as we were getting ready for the day, Julie continued to tease me, repeating over and over, "Daddy has found a new girlfriend." Julie and I enjoyed a fantastic Sunday dinner at my parents' house, where we had already settled in. It was a special time for my mother, who was delighted to cook for a group again. Both Julie and I ate so much that there were barely any leftovers. At 1 a.m., a call woke me from a sound sleep. It was Louise, confirming that the hotel detective had let them into the room while Michael and Chastity were still asleep. Cameras had recorded everything as they were served the legal documents in bed. Louise sent me a temporary copy of the video. I got out of bed, put on trousers, and went downstairs to make some tea. As I sat down with my cup of hot black tea, my mother joined me in the kitchen. "Is the water still hot?" she asked. I got up to make her a cup and showed her the video Louise had sent me. I watched as my mother's expression changed as she processed the footage. The video showed Chastity and Michael caught without clothes under the sheets. Their recorded voices expressed shock, and both looked like deer caught in headlights. No one who saw it could claim what they were doing was innocent. My mother immediately sent a copy of the video to her own phone before setting mine down. "We're done with Chastity," she said firmly. I love the complete shock on her face when she was served with the civil suit. "Julie and I blocked her phone number tonight," I replied. "I was warned that they would be served with lawsuits tonight, so it's done." It was a bittersweet moment for both my mom and me as we sat together, sharing tea and memories. The next morning at work, I walked up to the receptionist and said, "Block all incoming calls from my wife. I don't want to talk to her." By 11 o'clock, the receptionist came back to me, looking frustrated. "Listen, she calls here every 20 minutes. How can we stop this? What's your mobile number?" I asked. She gave it to me and I said, "I'm texting you a video clip. The next time she calls and asks to talk to me, ask for her cell number. If she gives it to you, send her this video. Let her know that Julie and I received it last night." Later, the receptionist reported back, "I did what you asked." Once she got the video, there were no more calls. She paused and added, "It intrigued me, so I looked it up. If your daughter or you need anything, just let me know." "Okay," I nodded in thanks. "Appreciate it," she said before walking away. I deleted the video from my phone and didn't mention it to anyone. while my mom was preparing dinner and Julie was helping her. I told my daughter about what had happened at work. Julie suddenly mentioned that she had received a strange text message from a number she didn't recognize. "It's for Mom," she said. "It asked me to call her." But it didn't take long to realize it was probably Michael's number. "I think your brothers will call us around 8 o'clock this evening," I replied. "Your mother will probably call them, too. I'm sure they've already been to the house and realized we're gone. If they do call, they'll be shocked." Julie grinned mischievously. "Let's turn off our cell phones, Dad. So my brothers will have to contact Grandma and Grandpa to find out what's going on." And that's exactly what we did. For Julie and me, it was a peaceful night. For others, it was not. Later, we learned what had happened. My sons, Jason and Justin, had gone to our former home. The moment they stepped inside, they noticed my favorite rocking chair was gone. This discovery sparked a search of the entire house, and it quickly became clear that Julie and I had moved out. It was only when they entered the kitchen that they found a note left by their sister. When they tried to call us, all their calls went straight to voicemail, which frustrated them even more. They ended up calling their mother, who claimed she didn't understand what the note meant or why we had moved out. Desperate, they called all over the city, trying to locate us, but to no avail. Finally, they reached out to their Uncle Charles. When Charles answered, he told them, "After what your mother did for the second time, maybe my brother doesn't want to be found." Jason and Justin explained the note they'd found, prompting Charles to add, "All I can say is that Michael is your mom's boss, and they've been sharing a hotel room in New York for over a week. You're old enough to draw your own conclusions from that." The boys were so shocked by this information that they forgot to ask themselves how and why Uncle Charles knew about it. Their search for Julie and me spread news of my wife's betrayal faster and more widely than gossip ever could. By the end of the next workday, my secretary forwarded me a call from my oldest son, Jake. After the usual greetings, he got straight to the point. "What's going on, Dad? Where do you and Julie live now?" "Not much, considering that in today's world, what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong," I replied cryptically. "Dad, let's not get into religion," Jake said, his frustration evident. "Just tell me the facts. Check your text messages for what I just sent you," I replied. "That will answer your question. Send it to Jason. If you want to talk, come see me at Grandpa's house after dinner." With that, I hung up, texted him the video, and sent a message to Julie to let her know what I had done. Less than 10 minutes later, Jake texted back, "Damn, I'll be at Grandpa's at 8. That evening, my parents left us alone to have a serious conversation about the current state of our family. Julie and I listened as my sons shared their thoughts on what I should do next. However, their opinions shocked me. The boys didn't see their mother's actions as a serious problem. Instead, they insisted I should just get over it. "We all make mistakes, Dad," they said. "Look how many times you forgave us when we were growing up." This angered their younger sister, Julie. "You may be my brothers, but you're both idiots," she said, her voice sharp with anger. "This wasn't a damn accident. Mom and Michael planned everything. The hotel room was reserved under Mr. and Mrs. D. Michael booked it a week before they even left. She wasn't sorry. She was excited. We watched Mom leave the house that Sunday afternoon. She left knowing exactly what she was going to do with Michael. Dad even offered to take her to the airport, but no. She wanted Michael to pick her up, just to rub it in our faces. They were probably laughing about us on the way to New York. She didn't even realize that we knew, and she never suspected we were watching everything. Julie's words silenced her brothers, leaving them without a response. Through their facade, Julie asked me why I hadn't stopped her mother. I told her. She would have lied and denied it, Your mother's actions made it clear that she was leaving the marriage. This wasn't an accident. It was planned and intentional. Dad and I knew about it 2 weeks before she left, Julie added. Michael's wife warned us. That's why we had the video within an hour of them being served with the lawsuits. Boys, you need to understand that your mother didn't just do this to me, I said. She did it to all of us. Then I added, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow to get tested for STDs. All 3 of my children stared at me, their eyes wide with amazement. I'm doing this because I can't be sure she didn't have other lovers on the side, I continued. This may just be the first time she's been caught. She's been going on business trips quite often over the past few years, and her behavior makes me wonder if these trips had a different purpose. Dad, you can't be serious, Jason protested. There's no chance Mom had other lovers. Based on what we've learned, can we at least agree that we'll never get the full truth out of her? I asked. The truth doesn't matter, I added. The facts do. If I don't have an STD, then maybe what you believe can still be true. But I'm not going to trust assumptions. When none of them responded, I stood up. It's time for me to get a cup of coffee. In the kitchen, my parents had been listening to the entire conversation. My father spoke up first. Clint, you're handling this the right way, he said. I wouldn't have thought about the possibility of others, but as an attorney at a firm that partly deals with lawsuits against the medical industry and pharmaceutical companies, it's definitely plausible. She was always flying off somewhere, and there have always been mediations before court. If she had a separate number or way to communicate on these trips, it wouldn't be hard to conceal it. You're smart not to trust everything she's been saying. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Louise. I excused myself and stepped out onto the veranda to take the call. Hi, Louise. Good to hear from you, I said. What's happened? I talked to Michael, she said, her voice tense. It didn't go well. He doesn't understand why I'm filing for divorce. He thinks I should just forgive him and move on like before. I told him my daughters are old enough now, and I don't need him in their lives anymore. That's when he finally realized that I no longer love him. He killed that love with his lies and betrayals. Chastity, though, seems to be in a bad place now. She's trying to figure out how things got to this point. It looks like they'll be back home on Thursday afternoon, now that an agreement has been reached. Julie and I blocked her number, I explained. I even told the receptionist at work to stop taking calls from her. It got so bad that she asked me to make Chastity stop. So, I gave her a copy of the video you sent and told her to forward it to Chastity. That stopped the calls. My wife now knows that we all know what happened. It must be hard for her to realize that she no longer controls the situation. I told Michael his belongings would be kept in the garage until he picks them up, Louise said. And I've already changed the locks on our house. I just wanted to see how you're dealing with all of this. I just had a long conversation with my kids, I replied. I explained that this might not have been her only betrayal. That's why I'm going to get checked out. When they asked me why I thought it was necessary, I told them, do you think your mother would honestly admit if she had other lovers? At this point, I'm just taking it one day at a time. Julie and I moved out, so now it's about moving forward. We talked a little more before wishing each other good night. When I returned to the kitchen, all 5 of them, my parents and 3 children, were waiting for me, as if expecting me to say something. I'm taking the day off tomorrow, I said. I have an appointment with a lawyer at 9 o'clock in the morning. Since the 2 of them may be returning home on Thursday, I want them to be served with their lawsuits the moment they step off the plane. That seemed to be the moment my sons finally understood the gravity of the situation. Tears welled up in their eyes as the reality sank in. My father broke the silence. Jake, Jason, Michael wasn't the first man your mother was caught with, but he will be the last. Clint is a stronger man than I am because I would have killed the first son of a dad. Jason interrupted. Mom said she had never cheated before. Until we showed her the video, she denied everything. You're idiots, my mother snapped. Why do you think your father never spoke to your Uncle Charles until this week? They just made peace about it last Sunday. That night, the boys were amazed as they looked at their sister. Uncle Charles admitted it, she said. He told me that Dad didn't deserve what happened, but he did apologize. When I told Dad that Uncle Charles and I had made up, it was emotional for everyone involved. I got up and put the kettle on. All three of my children were dealing with the consequences of their mother's actions in their own way. As their father, all I could do was be there for them. I knew that this situation would change their lives in ways they might not immediately see. How they processed and responded to this would ultimately shape the kind of people they became. The boys decided to head home to prepare for work the next day. By the time they left, the kettle was boiling. I prepared a cup of hot tea for myself and my mother. It was nearly 11 o'clock when Julie climbed into bed, leaving me with a chance to talk privately with my parents. They'll be watching you, Mom said. How you handle this will guide them. I know, Mom, I replied. I'm going to try to stay calm. To do that, I need to leave it to the lawyers. I can't go back in time and change what happened. Other than killing her, the rest is out of my hands. For some, that would be their final decision, my father admitted honestly. But you're right. Chastity isn't worth going to jail for. Neither is Charles, I added. My father looked at me with pride. You are a better man, son, he said. Your mother and I must have raised you right. The next morning, I met with the lawyer I had contacted. She listened intently as I recounted the events that had led me to her office. It was interesting to watch her take notes. When I mentioned the company where my wife worked, her expression shifted. Her eyes lit up. Mr. Clint Walker, did you know I once worked for that firm? She asked. They have a strict code of ethics that's written in their HR manual. I still have a copy of it. Noticing my interest, she added, this opens up an opportunity. We might not only sue the firm along with both of them, but we could make things very difficult for Brenda Ferguson, the senior partner. We might not get much beyond legal fees, given the way state judges approach these cases nowadays, but it would certainly create serious problems for both your wife and the company. Let's do it, I said firmly. As far as I know, they're returning from New York on the first incoming flight from St. Louis on Thursday afternoon. After I left a deposit for her services, the lawyer smiled and said, I'm looking forward to this. When they fired me, they said I didn't have the drive to follow through. They'll soon learn how wrong they were. As I left her office, I couldn't help but feel like David going toe-to-toe with Goliath. My wife's company was the largest in the area, with 4 divisions. Later, I visited our family doctor. He was visibly shocked when I explained why I needed to be tested for STDs. He had been our doctor throughout the years while the kids were growing up and had never expected something like this. Still, he agreed it was better to be safe. Unbeknownst to me, my oldest son, Jake, called his mother after leaving my parents' house. When he told her that I was getting tested to ensure I was clean, she demanded to know why. He answered bluntly, between Uncle Charles and Michael, no one in the family can say for sure that there weren't other lovers while you were traveling. She started to argue, but Jake cut her off. Don't bother trying to explain anything right now, Mom, he said. You've been caught lying too many times. Give it some time to cool off. Anything you say now will just seem like another lie. Meanwhile, things were moving quickly. The company where Chastity worked was fined, and the lovers were served lawsuits while they were still on the road. My lawyer filed a $10 million suit and made it clear that the dismissal of the senior and junior partners would be considered an admission of guilt. When the two lovers stepped off the plane Thursday afternoon, they were met by a procedural officer. According to witnesses, they did not appear to be a happy couple. My wife had to take a taxi home alone. A few days later, the doctor called me to come in for a follow-up appointment. Unfortunately, the tests showed that I had contracted a mild STD. Because it was mandatory to report it to the county health authorities, Chastity was summoned and forced to disclose all of her intimate partners. That same evening, the news broke. My lawsuit became public on the 6 p.m. broadcast, and Chastity and Michael's behavior was revealed to the world. Brenda Ferguson, the senior partner at their firm, began taking decisive action to mitigate the fallout. Julie called me between classes after reading my text message. I told her what the doctor had said. She, in turn, called her brothers and informed them, saying, "This confirms it. Mom must have had more lovers. That explains everything." That evening, I sat with my parents and daughter while they ate dinner. I declined to join them because I had a dinner date. My always curious daughter couldn't resist teasing me. "Is it with the same person as last week?" she asked, smiling slyly. When I answered yes, her smile widened. As I was leaving for dinner, Julie winked at me and sent a text that said, "Daddy has a girlfriend." Despite everything happening, it made me smile. I was pleased that she could still find humor in it. When I arrived at Red Lobster, Louise smiled warmly as she saw me walk in. This time, I had dressed informally, and so had she. "You don't do small things, do you?" Louise said with a laugh. "My dad says you're a rock star, and he loves it. If that doesn't take Michael down a notch, nothing will." "The lawyer I hired used to work for the firm," I replied, "and she's using my case to get back at them, with my full permission. She still has a copy of their HR management policies, which clearly outline the ethical violations. That's how we're able to sue them for not following their own rules." "I'd love to be a fly on the wall in their office tomorrow," Louise said. "It won't be a good day for them." The waitress arrived and showed us to our table. We both ordered drinks, and then Louise handed me an envelope. "Inside is a certified statement from 5 of Michael's former subordinates," she said. "They all worked at the firm during his tenure. Their statements make it clear that they were forced to satisfy his intimate needs." "Oh, my case just got a lot stronger," I said, amazed. To be honest, when my lawyer suggested this course of action, I thought we'd be lucky to just cover her legal fees. But these statements, they might go a long way toward establishing a long-term pattern of behavior. As the night went on, Louise and I talked more. We were both going through divorces, and slowly we started to develop a genuine friendship. I even began to enjoy the time we spent together. By the time I returned to my parents' house, it was nearly midnight. I sat in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil so I could make a cup of tea before bed. The quiet gave me time to reflect on everything that had happened since Chastity left for her trip. I was pouring the hot water into my cup when I heard Julie's voice behind me. "Daddy, make some for me too, please." I turned and saw my daughter standing there, tears streaming down her face. "It's okay to cry," I said softly. "It's part of healing. Honestly, I'm surprised you lasted this long." She threw herself into my arms, sobbing. I held her tightly until she calmed down. By the time we sat down with our tea, she seemed more settled. "How was your dinner with Louise?" she asked. "Honestly, we're just getting to know each other better," I replied. "But it looks like it'll turn out to be a good friendship." Julie asked a few questions about Louise, and I answered them as best as I could. The next day, at lunchtime, I took the statements Louise had given me to my lawyer. Later that afternoon, she called me with an update. "I've been busy collecting certified statements about another senior partner at the firm," she said. "Given what we've uncovered, I'm planning to file this as a class action on behalf of all the women involved. This will mean resubmitting the lawsuit and asking for a significantly larger amount. Go ahead, I told her. Before we ended the call, she added, by the way, I've heard from a friend at the firm that today has been a very difficult day for Chastity and Michael. Even though they brought home a huge settlement and made millions for the firm, no one is celebrating. The partners are furious, and there's no mention of the success. At work, my colleagues and senior management were supportive, which I deeply appreciated. On the way home, I stopped at the bank and withdrew $1,000 in cash. When I got back, I hugged my mother and slipped the money into her apron. What's this for? She asked, giving me a look only a mother can give her son. Just consider it a donation to help cover the extra expenses while we're living here, I said. Anywhere else, it would have cost me a lot more. She was about to argue, but I cut her off. Mom, just this once. Let it go, okay? Understood, she said, nodding. But don't expect it to happen again. I'm grateful you let me get away with it this time, I replied, smiling. Meanwhile, Chastity returned to an empty house, having survived a day where she was treated like a pariah. Both she and Michael had become unwanted guests at the firm. She couldn't understand how I had managed to find a disgruntled ex-employee who would never have made partner to represent me. It wasn't the lawsuit itself that bothered her most. It was the fact that I had chosen someone who knew all the tricks they'd try to minimize my claims, put the firm at a disadvantage from the start. That evening, with a drink in hand, she sat down and read the divorce petition. For the first time, she realized that both Julie and I had known about her plans all along. She now saw that this was truly the end of our marriage. The realization hit her hard. There was no way to undo the damage she had caused. Chastity sent me and Julie a message, but this time, it was clear she knew we weren't going to respond. Even if her message was genuine, no one would believe her anymore. Her best defense, she decided, was to stall and wait, hoping I'd eventually calm down enough to talk. As she reflected on everything, she realized Jay had been right. Every action she took now seemed like a lie in the eyes of everyone who knew what she had done. None of it had been worth it. Not what she had done, nor the pain she had forced everyone to face. Still in a daze, Chastity walked out the front door to get the mail. She thought things couldn't possibly get worse, until they did. Sorting through the junk mail, Chastity found an envelope addressed to her from the county health department. Opening it, she discovered the shocking news. I had contracted an STD. The letter requested that she come in for a checkup. Chastity sat down, overwhelmed, and started crying. This was turning into a real nightmare for her. The encounters on business trips over the years were now coming back to haunt her. She realized that Clint would eventually share the results with their children, and they would think of her as nothing more than a serial cheater. Meanwhile, Michael Trusk was sitting at the counter of a cheap, dark bar on the wrong side of town, drowning his sorrows. He couldn't understand why his wife, Louise, had filed for divorce this time. She had forgiven him for all his other affairs, which is what made this betrayal feel so different. Why had she drawn the line now? Lost in thought, Michael didn't notice when a man sat down on the stool next to him. A commotion broke out at the other end of the bar, a loud argument escalating into a fight. Michael turned to look, just like everyone else, but before he could process what was happening, he was struck hard in the face. Not once, but 3 times. A deep, commanding voice cut through the noise. I'm a friend of Chastity's husband, Clint. Every time I see you, I will do this again. What gave you the right to destroy the life of a good man? Through the blood and pain, Michael barely managed to glimpse his attacker, a massive African-American man. Then everything went dark. Back at my father's barn that Saturday afternoon, I was cleaning out a couple of paddocks when my eldest son, Jake, approached me. He was stubborn, like I had been in my youth, and once he made up his mind about something, it was nearly impossible to change it. Jake had visited his mother earlier that morning. Chastity had taken it badly, spending hours crying on his shoulder. Now, Jake believed that the best solution was for me to take her back so we could all live as though nothing had ever happened. I let him talk, not interrupting until he had fully let out his thoughts. Then I finally spoke. "Jake, if you were married," I said, "and found out that your wife was sleeping with other men, would you take the advice you just gave me?" He fell silent, unable to respond. "You came here and told me to take her back," I continued. "You think I should shut up and just enjoy her presence in my life. Do you realize what that means? In your eyes, I'm a non-entity, someone everyone can trample on." His face turned white. He had never seen me like this, and the gravity of my words hit him hard. I took a deep breath and added, "If you don't respect me as a person, as someone capable of making my own decisions, then don't come here again." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned and grappling with what I had said. Jake was young and foolish, just as I had been at his age. He reacted impulsively and without understanding, and now he had to face the consequences of his behavior. Still confused, Jake went to talk to his uncle Charlie. After hearing what had happened, Charlie told him, "Jake, this reminds me of how foolish I was at your age. Your mother was after me, and I fell in love with her. It cost me 18 years of separation from my brother. You need to understand," Charlie continued, "that there are always two sides to every story. Both parties express their emotions, and everything they say is colored by their own perspective. But in this case, your father is right. Your mother didn't get the STD from Michael, so whoever it was, she brought it home and shared it with your father. To me, this proves that she saw my brother as nothing, someone to use and discard." Charlie sighed and added, "After everything your father did for his family, this is his final reward. You need to fix this, Jake. If you don't, you might lose your father forever. Our father always said to give someone one chance when they hurt you. If they do it again, they're done. Your mother took her chance with me, and it's sad that her behavior shows she never learned anything." On Monday morning, at the firm where Chastity and Michael worked, things seemed to turn around for them. My lawyer had dropped the lawsuit against the firm, so both of them were returned to good standing. Throughout the day, they were praised for the outstanding settlements they had achieved for their clients, bringing in millions for the firm. However, Michael looked terrible, with 2 large bruises and a cut above his left eyebrow. At one point, he walked into Chastity's office to tell her what had happened at the bar and what was said. Later that day, as I was leaving the nursing home, Chastity was standing by my car. She looked tired and exhausted, clearly struggling to hold herself together. As I approached, she spoke first. "Call off your dogs, Clint," she said. "Michael has enough problems of his own without your thirst for revenge." "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied honestly. "He was beaten," Chastity continued, her voice strained. "The man said he's your friend and that every time he sees Michael, he'll do it again." I couldn't help myself. I started laughing. It was, without a doubt, the best news I'd received in weeks. After calming down, I replied, "If I knew who it was, believe me, I'd buy that man a large bottle of whiskey as a token of my gratitude. Honestly, I think your lover got off easy. If it were me, he'd already be dead." As I finished speaking, my phone buzzed with a text message. I checked it and saw it was from Louise. She wrote that I should come to her house as soon as possible because it was important. A moment later, another message followed, providing her address. I replied that I was already on my way. I've never seen you so cold and cruel, Chastity said, her voice wavering. It shouldn't be like this. Get your damn lawyer, and let's get a divorce already. I didn't say another word. I got into my car, started it, and drove away, leaving her standing there. I was done with her lies and her warped sense of morality. Forever. When I arrived at Louise's house, she was standing at the door, clearly upset. What's happened? I asked as I approached. Is there something I can help solve? My dad's friend had his cousin beat up Michael, Louise said, her voice tense. And he used your name to send a message. I couldn't help it. A huge smile spread across my face. Seeing this, Louise looked relieved. You're not angry or worried? She asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Not at all, I said, shaking my head. I just wish I knew where he lives, so I could send him that thank you whiskey. My response was automatic, but seeing her reaction, I couldn't help but hug her for a moment. Louise didn't resist. Reluctantly, I let her go and was about to apologize, but she stopped me with a kiss on the cheek. They're both inside and want to work things out with you, Louise said, taking my hand. We held hands as she led me to the kitchen. On the way, I saw her daughters peeking out from one of the bedrooms. I winked at them and they smiled and winked back. Louise's father, who was a little younger than mine, greeted me respectfully. Then I saw the huge African-American man sitting in the kitchen. Recognizing him immediately, I smiled. If you were of age, I said, extending my hand in friendship, I'd send you that large bottle of whiskey as a token of gratitude. He shook my hand and replied, next time you want to do something stupid, ask yourself if it's worth going to jail. My father told me that when I was your age, and it saved me a lot of trouble. The tension in the room dissolved after that. Formal introductions were made, and soon after, Louise's father said it was time to take the young man home. That left me alone with Louise and her two daughters. The girls came out of their room and introduced themselves. Livia was 10 years old, and Lori was 8. I crouched down to their level and asked, "What's your favorite restaurant?" They quickly replied that it was an all-you-can-eat pizza place called Zeiss. Smiling, I said, "Would you young ladies allow me to invite you and your mother there for dinner?" Maybe it was the way I was dressed, in a suit but without a tie, but they immediately said yes. "Well, there's one thing I need to do before we go," I said. "What is it?" the girls asked, curious. "I need to call my mom and let her know I won't be home for dinner." They thought that was hilarious and burst into laughter. By the time we arrived at Zeiss, Louise and I walked in while the girls ran ahead to explore. Once seated, we chatted while enjoying our food. At one point, Louise got up to get more pizza, and a colleague stopped to talk to her. Meanwhile, Livia turned to me and asked, "Are you Mom's boyfriend?" "I'm a guy and I'm her friend," I replied, smiling, not sure where she was going with this. "Did you go on a date with her?" Livia asked persistently. "I haven't invited her yet," I replied honestly, "but I would have to get permission from someone else before I could do that." "From whom?" Lori asked, curious. "From you and your sister," I said with a grin. The girls laughed before exclaiming in unison, "You can! Mom already says she likes you." When Louise returned to the table, she found us laughing and talking as if we had known each other for years. Later, when I got up to grab more food, Lori decided to join me. She was ready for dessert, so I helped her fill her plate. To my surprise, she waited for me to finish before heading back to the table together. After dinner, I escorted Louise and her daughters back to their front door. As Louise unlocked it, I crouched down to thank Livia and Lori for having dinner with me. "Good night, ladies," I said with a smile. The girls ran inside, giggling as they got ready for bed. I turned to Louise, ready to say goodbye. Since I was extremely inexperienced in dating, I figured it was best to keep things simple. "Good night, Louise," I said, stepping back. "Come back here," Louise called, stopping me in my tracks. I turned on the steps so that we were face to face. Louise leaned in and kissed me softly on the lips. Surprised but unable to resist, I reciprocated her feelings. "My daughter said you were going to ask me on her first date," Louise teased with a smile. "Olivia made a mistake," Louise added, laughing. She had caught me off guard, so I quickly began explaining what happened while she was talking to her colleague. We ended up sitting on her front porch, talking like teenagers about the situation. Took us a while, but eventually we both admitted that we were interested in each other. At the same time, we acknowledged the challenges we were facing and agreed to take things slow. Since it was almost the end of September, we decided to take her daughters to the town fair the following Saturday and see how things unfolded from there. It was nearly 10 p.m. by the time I returned to my parents' farm. As soon as I walked in, Julie immediately noticed my good mood. "Dad has a huge, happy smile on his face," Julie said. "The meeting must have been really important for him to be this happy." I smiled and told my parents and Julie about the day's events. My father couldn't stop laughing when I mentioned Chastity asking me to leave Michael alone because he already had a lot of problems. On Friday, my lawyer filed a new lawsuit against the firm. This time, it named 4 senior partners and 16 female victims, tying them all together in a joint case. Copies of the claim were delivered to the senior partners' homes. For 3 of the older partners, this led to an immediate backlash. Each was told by their spouse not to return home. Meanwhile, Brenda Ferguson continued her campaign of calling Chastity daily, trying to find out who her divorce lawyer was. Before I returned home that evening, my mother sent emails to many of Chastity's relatives. She attached a copy of the lawsuit filing and the video of Chastity and Michael being served. The text accompanying the email read, "This wasn't Chastity's first lover on these so-called business trips. It's just the first time she got caught. Clint contracted an STD. The next day, as I was getting ready to pick up Louise and the girls for the fair, Julie stopped me. "You really love Louise, don't you?" she asked. "Julie, the sad fact is that since the divorce started, a lot of the friends your mom and I had over the years have disappeared," I said. "Louise and I bonded over shared experiences, and because of that, it's been easy to trust each other. It's too early to tell where this relationship will lead, but I'm open to it. Dad, if you need dating advice, don't hesitate to ask," Julie said with a mischievous smile. "Just promise me you'll introduce us to her before things get too serious." At the fair, I learned that Louise was afraid of heights, so I spent about an hour riding the Ferris wheel with her daughters. At their age, it was their favorite ride, and they couldn't get enough of it. Afterward, we all played it by ear, just enjoying the moment. The 4 of us eventually headed to the food area when the girls decided they were hungry. Lori, tired from all the excitement, sat on my shoulders as we walked. While we were waiting in line for food, I spotted my brother Charles and his wife, Mary. They were there with their 2 youngest children. Their older ones were off somewhere with friends. Introductions were made, and to my surprise, Mary and Louise hit it off right away. After I set Lori down, we all sat to eat together. The 4 children quickly bonded, finding company in each other, while the adults followed their lead. Considering the cost of fair rides these days, it didn't take long before I had spent a couple of $100s. Before we left, Charles and Mary invited Louise and her daughters to a family gathering on Sunday. Louise said she'd love to come but explained that her daughters would be spending the day with their father for the first time since he had left for New York. By 6 p.m., the children were tired. Louise had bathed her daughters and put them to bed when Michael called her. He informed her that he wouldn't be able to pick up the children on Sunday because he was in the emergency room, receiving medical care. "It looks like he's been beaten again," Louise told me. "He accused you of being behind it." "That's impossible," she continued before I could respond. "I told him you spent the whole day at the fair with me and the kids." Michael was clearly unhappy, but I let it go. I called my brother to let him know the kids wouldn't be coming on Sunday. I reluctantly left Louise's house around 9 p.m. We had decided to officially start dating the next day, and I was already looking forward to it. At 2 p.m. on Sunday, I picked up Louise and her daughters and went to my brother's house. Julie and her current boyfriend were already there, along with my parents and Charles's entire family. My 2 oldest children arrived last, making it a full house. For Charles, it was a significant event. It was the first time in his entire married life that I had been in his home. Mary was delighted to introduce Louise and her daughters to everyone, and it didn't take long before they were fully accepted into the family. What stood out to me was when my oldest son, Jake, pulled me aside and said, "We need to talk." We walked to the edge of Charles's property, away from everyone else. "Dad, I was wrong," Jake began. "I fell for Mom's manipulations. She set me up when I came to you last week. Uncle Charles and several of my colleagues have since explained everything to me." "What lesson did you learn?" I asked, looking him in the eye. Jake hesitated, but then said, "When it comes to family, first of all," Jake said, "the best thing to do is to stay away. No matter what you do, you're only making things worse. You need to let them figure it out on their own, in their own time, not yours." "You're right," I replied, "but this is one of the hardest things to do because we care so much. Your mother and I might be able to talk to each other someday. But that day is still far away because of the way she behaved." "Behavior," Jake repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, behavior," I continued, "because behavior is the one thing that can't be argued or explained away. Look at Louise. She stayed in a loveless marriage until she knew she could raise her daughters on her own. She chose to be patient and waited until the time was right for her. Her behavior says more about her character than anything else. Your mother's behavior, on the other hand, stunned your sister and me because of the cruelty with which she did it. No matter what she says now, her behavior makes most of her words a lie. One of the things your grandfather taught us when we were young was this: if I'm not worthy of honesty, then you're not worth lying to." "Dad," Jake said sadly, "the question has to be asked, what else did she lie about?" "That's a question that will never be answered," I said. "There's no point in wasting time looking back, son. All we can do is learn from it and move forward. I like what I see in Louise, but the more I learn about Michael and your mother, the more I think they deserve each other." At that moment, Julie came up to us and said, "Your conversation is starting to attract attention. Maybe you can leave the rest for later." "We're done, sister," Jake said. "I just needed to apologize to Dad." Jake walked away, and Julie turned to me. "What was that about?" she asked. "A bad case of foot-and-mouth disease," I explained. "It's good to see that he had the sense to admit it." Charles and Mary hosted a wonderful dinner that evening. Mary took countless photographs of everyone together, and everyone enjoyed how Lori kept a close eye on me. When the kids started a water fight, I couldn't resist joining in. Of course, I ended up soaking wet, as it was 4 against 1. Eventually, the kids grew tired, and I sat in a lounge chair to dry off. Lori climbed into my lap and quickly fell asleep. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Mary and Louise talking quietly, likely about the developing relationship between me and Louise's daughters. My father sat down next to me and said, "This little girl has already chosen you. Be careful, Clint, and make sure you're not getting into this just to get revenge on Michael." I nodded and said, "Dad, I've told you everything about our relationship since the day Louise first called me." He smiled and replied, "I should have listened to my thoughts on this sooner. Your mother asked me to have this conversation with you. Whatever you decide in the future, you have our support." "Dad, look at our society as a whole," I said, shifting the conversation. "It's like this. Imagine one of this country's greatest Democratic presidents, someone like John F. Kennedy, denies his Democratic Party membership, runs on the Republican ticket, and wins in the next election. The most conservative members of Congress refuse to run again. What's left of the Republican Party looks more like Kennedy's original values. Yet the media fills the airwaves with hatred, propaganda, and lies, labeling him a traitor to the Democratic cause. He hasn't changed. He's still a Kennedy Democrat. But because public opinion has shifted, he's suddenly an enemy." "What's the point of this statement?" my father asked. "It's the same with Mom," I said. "She shares the same idea of truth, honesty, behavior, and morality as these people. Those who don't align with her way of thinking are discarded, just like how the media attacks what doesn't fit their narrative. Truth, honesty, and good behavior mean nothing to them until they're forced to face consequences. Then, and only then, they claim they're sorry, but it's always too little, too late." My father chuckled. "People need to learn to flush 100% of the garbage they see in the media and on social networks down the toilet. Finding honesty in real life is hard enough as it is, but most people are too foolish to understand that." He continued, "It's funny, isn't it? We're seeing two versions of Democrats fighting each other. That simple truth explains a lot about what's going on." "Exactly," I said. "When you look at all the accomplishments this so-called traitor has achieved, it's no wonder their hatred grows. It's not just hatred, it's incompetence. His achievements make theirs look small even after years of being in power. Most of them have spent decades doing nothing except getting reelected." "Damn, Clint, that's a strong statement," my father said. "It just goes to show how effective the media is as a propaganda machine." On Monday, while I was in my office, a detective came by to speak with me about the ongoing problem with Michael Trusk. It took about an hour to explain everything I knew and to provide him with a list of the women whose spouses had just discovered Michael's affairs with their wives. It had been more than 6 weeks since I first learned about Chastity's relationship with Michael. Louise, Michael's wife, had called me to tell me what they were planning, and it had been at least 4 weeks since their so-called romantic trip. I met Louise for the first time while Michael and my wife were in New York. Since then, due to the shared pain caused by our spouses, Louise and I had grown closer. Now, we were in a relationship, though we were still figuring out where it was going. "That definitely paints a different picture," the detective said. "Michael Trusk seems to blame you for ruining his marriage rather than taking responsibility for his own behavior. I'm starting to think he's one of those people who can't accept responsibility and always looks for someone else to blame." After the detective left, I called Brenda Ferguson to tell her what had just happened. She wasn't surprised. "Michael is exactly the type of person who would set others up," she said. "In fact, I've always believed he was behind my dismissal from the firm." Brenda also informed me that Chastity had finally found herself a lawyer. When I got home to my parents' farm, I learned from my mother that it was her letter to Chastity's relatives that had made Chastity finally give up. Until then, she had still thought there was a chance we could work things out once I cooled down. I realized that Chastity must have believed I sent that letter out of revenge. On Wednesday, Julie and I took Louise and her daughters to dinner at Olive Garden, where we were joined by my sons. During dinner, I revealed to everyone that Chastity had officially hired a lawyer to negotiate the terms of our divorce. Louise's daughters seemed particularly drawn to Julie for some reason, and Julie was more than happy to give them her full attention. Overall, Louise and I thought the dinner was a success. 2 months had passed since our last family meeting. On Friday afternoon, I sat beside Brenda Ferguson, waiting to be called before Judge Donald McDonald. Across the hall sat my soon-to-be ex-wife and her lawyer, a divorce attorney from the same firm Michael had worked for. We had already agreed on the division of property, and since there was no mortgage on the house, it was straightforward. Chastity agreed to buy out my share of the house based on its current appraisal and give me half of our joint savings. When we were called before the judge, each of us had to confirm that we agreed to the terms. Once we did, the divorce was finalized. As I walked out toward the parking lot, Chastity stopped me on the front steps. She looked defeated. "I ruined myself," she admitted. "I finally confessed everything to our sons. Julie still refuses to talk to me because she thinks what I did was intentional. I only wish I had seen earlier what kind of message I was sending. I would accept that explanation from our daughter because of her inexperience in life," I replied. "But from an adult, it sounds superficial and self-serving." Louise's divorce had already been finalized. She had negotiated everything she could from Michael. He was ordered to pay $3,000 a month in child support. $1, $500 for each daughter, until they turned 18, plus half the cost of their post-secondary education. Their house was to be sold, and the profits divided equally. For some reason, Michael had left the company and moved to another city to open his own business. It seemed his constant run-ins with angry spouses and their fists had finally gotten to him. With the share he received from the company, he was set for life. Later that evening, my parents invited Louise and her daughters over for dinner. What we didn't know was that they had also invited Louise's parents. Given the developing relationship between Louise and me, they felt it was time for the families to meet in case things became more serious. Brenda Ferguson was also making progress on our joint lawsuit. She had negotiated with the firm's liability insurance provider, and it looked like the case would be resolved out of court. After paying her 30% share, each of us involved in the suit was set to receive more than $750,000. We all sat around my mother's formal dining room table, which was being used for the first time in years, relaxing after a big dinner. Suddenly, I stood up, pushed back my chair, and got down on one knee, pulling a small ring box from my pocket. I said, "Louise, will you take a second chance at love and marry me?" Louise, completely shocked, covered her mouth with her hands. "Yes," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Then louder, she said, "Yes." That's when the real celebration began. My mom immediately called Charles, Mary, and my two sons to share the news. Within half an hour, they had all arrived to join in the excitement. Amidst the laughter and congratulations, I noticed Lori sitting on the floor, crying quietly. Concerned, I walked over, sat down next to her, and gently asked, "What's wrong, baby?" "Nothing," Lori said, climbing into my lap. "I'm just happy that you're going to be my dad." Overwhelmed, I held her close as tears welled up in my own eyes. I looked over at Louise, who was watching us with tears streaming down her face as well. Standing up with Lori in my arms, I walked over to Louise. Everyone in the room could see how much this moment meant to both of us. "Mom," Olivia said, breaking the silence, "when you and Clint get married, will we take his last name too?" "As soon as the court allows it," I replied with a smile. Livia and Lori's faces lit up with joy. My father added warmly, "From now on, you two are part of this family." My only thought was how much time my new daughters would spend with my parents. I reflected. Both girls seemed excited about the idea of spending time on the farm. My father had already mentioned teaching them how to ride horses, and I knew they'd take to it in no time. Later, in private, Louise asked me, "How are you going to convince Michael Trusk to let you adopt the girls and legally change their last name to yours?" "Leave it up to me," I said confidently. The search for a new home began in earnest. The plan was for Louise and the girls to move in before the wedding. About a month later, I decided to take a bold step and showed up unexpectedly at Michael Trusk's office. His secretary informed him of my arrival and told me to go in. I walked in and closed the door behind me. Michael's face had begun to heal, but his appearance had changed significantly. He had been beaten 8 times since leaving New York, and although the detective had interviewed many of his former lovers and their spouses, there were still no firm suspicions about who was responsible. I decided to take the risk that Michael believed I was the one behind his injuries. "I think you've heard that Louise and I are getting married," I said. Michael's face went pale as he looked up at me, clearly convinced that I was the one responsible for his beatings. "What do you want from me?" he asked fearfully. "I need your permission in the form of a legal document to adopt your daughters so they can take my last name," I replied. "This isn't just my wish. It's what Livia asked her mother and me for. This document must legally recognize us both as their fathers, but allow them to change their last name to mine." "Why should I even consider this?" he said, his voice trembling. "Because this will get you away from me forever," I said flatly. "If you don't agree, you and I can meet often." It took him half an hour to type and print the document I requested. I knew he didn't truly care about his daughters. He hadn't seen them since leaving for New York. His secretary, who was also a notary, certified the document and stamped it. According to Louise, Michael had only married her because she had gotten pregnant, and his family pressured him into proposing. I left his office satisfied, knowing I had accomplished what I set out to do. I arrived at the kindergarten where Louise taught just as she was letting her class go for the day. Because the school staff didn't know me, I had to wait in the office while they called her. When Louise arrived, she looked surprised to see me. "Louise, I made a promise to your daughters the day we got engaged," I said, handing her an envelope I had pulled from my jacket pocket. "I think this will help us give them what they want." She opened the envelope and read the document inside. Her eyes filled with tears. "How did you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Michael still believes I'm behind his repeated encounters with fists," I said. "I used his fear to our advantage to get this for us. I thought we could arrange it so that on our wedding day, Livia and Lori could legally take my last name." Louise smiled through her tears. "Julie told me the night we got engaged that you always keep your word, especially when it's a promise made to a child. Do you think Brenda Ferguson can handle the adoption papers and file them in court?" I asked. "I'll call her office," Louise replied. Taking out my phone, I dialed Brenda's office. The secretary answered and confirmed that Brenda could handle the paperwork. I made an appointment for us to visit later that afternoon. At Brenda's office, she was delighted to hear the news. Within 20 minutes, she prepared the necessary documents and printed them, attaching the notarized statement I had provided. By the end of the day, the papers were filed in court. A week later, we received confirmation that the adoption and name change would be approved. The only remaining question was when it would take effect. To resolve this, we held a family meeting. It was scheduled for Sunday, as the movers would be transporting Louise and the girls' belongings to our new home that week. The rest of the week, Louise and I were busy at work. On Monday morning, the detective investigating the ongoing attacks on Michael Trusk visited me again. "We've made 2 arrests," he said. "One of them is another senior partner from the firm Michael worked at, someone he had been involved with. The second is an African-American man who still believed he and Michael were in a relationship." Hearing this, I was relieved that the attacks had not been orchestrated by anyone I knew. On Sunday, Charles and Mary joined us at the new house. It was the first time Louise, her daughters, and I were all together in what would soon be our home. My brother and his wife brought their usual warmth, and Louise's daughters quickly bonded with everyone. During the family gathering after dinner, I stood up and gathered everyone's attention. Before we go any further, I said, I want to share some exciting news. I turned to Louise, took her hand, and smiled. Louise, your daughters will legally take my last name on the day of our wedding, I said. And with that, our family will finally be whole. Louise's eyes filled with tears, and the entire room erupted in cheers. Lori and Livia hugged me tightly, and Olivia asked, Mom, when you and Clint get married, will we really have the same last name as him? Yes, sweetie, Louise replied, smiling. From across the room, my father added, Livia and Lori, from now on, you can call us Grandma and Grandpa. The girls' faces lit up with joy, and I felt a profound sense of peace. We were the last to arrive at the family gathering, bringing with us a huge pot of Boston baked beans that Louise had made. It was a potluck brunch, and the house was already buzzing with excitement. After the greetings, my future father-in-law asked, What's new? We want to announce, I said with a smile, that in 2 weeks, just 6 days before Christmas, 2 very special things will happen. First, Louise and I will exchange vows. And second, the adoption of Livia and Lori will be finalized. All 3 will officially take the name Walker. Louise added, We'll be spending our honeymoon next summer with our daughters. It'll be either at Disneyland or Disney World. The room erupted into a mix of cheers and chatter. Amidst the commotion, Livia quietly walked over to me, climbed into my lap, and looked at me with her big, sincere eyes. Thank you, Dad, she said softly. For what? I asked, surprised. Because you love us enough to keep your word, she replied. Her words left me completely speechless. All I could do was take her into my arms and hug her tightly, holding back tears as the weight of her gratitude washed over me. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, the wife in this story was absolutely wrong. She should have been honest with her husband and told him she didn't want to be with him anymore, instead of betraying him so cruelly. See you next time.